Hello everybody and welcome back. As always, I am Mateo311 and this is your channel for everything VR related. Today, we're discussing a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and that's the question of, has VR lost its magic? Now there's a metric ton to break down here, but I want to focus on a few specific topics such as the quality of games, the major players who are currently controlling the VR industry, and the overall direction it's headed in, my personal changes after running this YouTube channel for 5 years now, and finally how the VR community has changed on both the consumer and developer sides. Now there are of course links and timestamps if you want to skip ahead, and I would greatly appreciate any feedback you have down in the comments, but let's just start things off with...
Oh shit, here we go again.
We have just entered 2025's VR is dead again era. Wow, it's dead. It's not what it used to be. I don't like it. VR is going nowhere. We hear this every freaking year, and it gets more and more laughable each year because we see the industry growing. We see new hardware constantly. We see the hardware getting better and better. We see the games improving. We see more and more developers making money. Yes, it's still a rocky industry. It's definitely not certain. It could still die out, but not right now. It's not dead just because one person gets annoyed or whatever the case may be. A couple of games fail, which actually hasn't happened recently, but it's not dead. It's cyclical. It always has been. We always have these peaks and valleys in VR. New hardware comes out. Everyone's excited. It's the holiday season. Buy. Ads. And then you go through, January, February, and it's always slow. It happens every year. So I'm sick of the VR is dead, and I don't give a crap what anyone thinks. I'm loving it more than ever. But let's move on to the first real topic. So today's main topic, has VR lost its magic? And when I'm talking about magic, I mean, is it still as immersive and impressive as when it first released? And I wish I could give a straightforward yes or no answer, but it's kind of both. VR has gone through significant changes and growing pains. The early days of VR were all about maximum immersion. It's something that you couldn't get in typical flat screen gaming to actually feel like you're there, embody a player, and experience these new worlds. But unfortunately, as immersive as it was, and pretty much overwhelming when you first experienced VR, it also had no content whatsoever. The content was so sparse that the people who loved the technology were just dying for anything. Some third-party and even first-party developers came out strong, as there was a ton of hype surrounding VR. Unfortunately though, adoption was quite low, and this led to a lot of early titles cutting a lot of corners. We had games like Batman VR and Wolfenstein Cyberpilot that were 45 minutes long. So the PC VR craze came in with a nice rush that quickly dropped off because people realized there wasn't a lot of money in it yet. Now, I will say there were third-party developers like Stress Level Zero, and we have Valve that came in strong even after this point in time and showed us what VR is really about. Boneworks was amazing, and come on, Half-Life Alyx, they showed us just how good VR could be. Unfortunately though, Stress Level Zero and Boneworks is an outlier, and no one else in the industry can really afford to develop a game like Half-Life Alyx because the risk is just way too freaking high. It did have an impact, but the growth we needed in VR wasn't there, and you have to evolve or die. So VR has changed, and some of it is for the much better, and some of it, is undoubtedly a bit worse. Meta was able to make VR affordable, which was really the savior for many VR developers, and keeping the overall industry afloat. But at the same time, we had to sacrifice a ton of graphical fidelity and overall immersion. I personally miss how games used to look and more importantly feel back from PC VR in 2019 and 2020. Boneworks felt amazing. Half-Life Alyx, again, I'm repeating myself, but if you guys were in that OG PC VR stage, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and you know we are missing something now. However, we needed the industry to grow to keep getting those experiences. If we want those again, the industry has to grow, and then the games will catch back up. Those titles were outliers. They're not going to really happen again until the industry gets much, much bigger. So that's why I'm very supportive of where we are and actually impressed. Because if you would have came in 2017 VR between the clunky setup, the wire, the expensive PC to play something like The Lab, which you would have been like, wow, this is amazing. But you got, a bunch of mini games and that's it. No real substance. Substance has grown so much more because the budgets are bigger now and we're getting better quality games. Maybe they're still not graphically as impressive as some of the older titles that were made specifically for PC, but you gotta admit they're getting better and better, and I am happy with the direction that things are going. But I'm looking at the standpoint of the overall industry, which I know many consumers don't give a crap about. They just want their own top-notch experience, and I totally get that, especially because you're spending your own money. Now, on the flip side of that, if you were an OG PC VR gamer, you're probably extremely desensitized to VR by now, and a lot of the wow factor is completely lost, especially if you're downgrading in graphics from a PC VR title to Quest 3. So in that sense, you could say, yes, some of the magic is definitely lost. However, I want you to stop and think about the complete opposite side. The person who's never tried VR before and their first experience is going to be on a Quest 3. They're most likely going to be extremely impressed. Don't take that away from them. Remember, go back in time and think about the first time you experienced VR and be like, wow, they're getting that experience for the first time. Don't think to yourself, well, it could have been better. It could have been PC VR. It could have been better graphics, higher resolution, whatever. No, because remember, we started on like the HTC Vive or the Rift CV1. The resolution was crap and they were uncomfortable. They didn't have headphones. No, they're getting a better experience now overall. Now, how I see the industry has definitely impacted my overall YouTube channel throughout the years. Originally, I was super critical of VR, and this is only because I loved it and wanted it to improve. So I wanted to get the word out about what's good, what isn't, what needs to be fixed, why it's not practical, because we had to solve those issues to grow, to get bigger, so more and more people can experience it. I didn't want to be, VR's amazing, you can't, if you say it's not, you're an idiot. Like, if you're just this hyped up cheerleader when there's nothing to really be hyped up about, it's fake. And people are going to laugh it off. They're going to be like, no, VR's a gimmick, give me a break. So I was very critical in the beginning, and now I do lean more towards cheerleader because I think the industry is growing. I'm very happy. I'm happy to be part of it. I want it to keep growing. There is a selfish side. The industry grows. I'm eventually going to get those experiences and games that I want. Bigger and bigger titles, maybe eventually like my God of War in VR. So I do want that. I want to kind of manifest what I want in the industry. I want to help it along. But at the same time, I'm not going to hesitate to be critical. It's not as fun to shit talk games like very often. So if I don't enjoy something, I usually just skip it and don't cover it unless it's something like that's hyped up that people really want to see. And then I'm going to jump into it and tell you about my experience. If it's crap, you're going to hear it's crap. So yeah, the industry has also changed me a bit throughout this process, but I'm happy where we are now. I don't get called a cynical bastard every day, or people tell me I'm so pessimistic, which they still do sometimes. But I also get the opposite. I'm a complete chill. Awesome, man. But listen, evolve or die. Now, moving into the consumer side of the VR community, that's been pretty rocky, and I would say it's filled with way too much positivity and negativity. There are people out there that'll claim anything is better in VR. Like, no, put a headset on and take a dump. It'll improve your life, man. Game changing. And there's some people out there, no matter what the headset offers, they'll just never be satisfied. Or something, Mark Zuckerberg's a jerk. But probably the worst part of the consumer community is the warring factions that cannibalize us all. Between PC VR, PlayStation VR 2, and metaquest owners, it feels like console fanboying, PC master race all over again. As I discussed in a recent video, each one of these devices has their individual pros and cons. Let's just support them all so the industry continues to grow, which can only help the overall industry and give us more of the games that we love. Now, moving on from the consumer side of the industry and into the business side, this is something that's quite new to me. I can't tell you how it used to operate, but what I am seeing now is a very close-knit group of people. It's a really awesome, tight-knit community. Like, everyone realizes that VR is fragile. This could disappear at any moment, and just the fact that they've survived from like day one to now, those studios that realized what they needed to do and got better and better, well, they look at each other with like mutual admiration, and they know their struggle. They go, yeah, I know you're struggling, but we're doing it. They believe in the industry. They're not making games for a quick buck or to sell out. There's not a lot of money in VR. The people working in VR are 99% because they love VR. And that's what's impressed me in the past year. Now, in an attempt to stop this video from being a bit too ranty, I just want to recap a few things real quick and give some final notes. In terms of, did VR lose its magic? No. Sure, it fluctuates up and down, and we see a lot of growing pains, but it still continues to get more and more impressive. The industry and VR games have, however, changed over time, and you really need to be in it for the long haul if you want an experience like Half-Life Alyx to become the norm. And finally, I just want to summarize the current overall status of the industry. VR is not like this booming market that people thought it would be 8 years ago. It's also not this dying, straight down trajectory that people have been saying it is for years. That neither of those are true. It has its ups and downs. It's in the middle. It is definitely being bolstered by Meta carrying it, developing new hardware and making hardware affordable. And they're doing the same in the game industry. So they are the ones funding the big titles like Batman Arkham Shadow. But overall, they might pull out of nowhere and put a lot more focus into wearables, which is their end goal. So if you are a true VR gaming fan, we need to support this industry. We have to get it to grow to a certain size so that third party can make the experiences we want. They can afford to, that it's not a huge gamble to throw 20, 30, 40 million dollars into a VR game. That's what we need to get to. Because at some point, if Meta says, we're not doing first party, it'll be a little sad. I don't want to see that happen. And I hope when we get there, the VR industry is not looking like a bunch of indie players. It's looking like VR veterans. All right, guys. So that was today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sure there's a ton of questions. Let me know what you think down in the description. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing.